동해분쪽 서해본쪽 천하를 쥐락펴라 방산천리 주름 잡아 장군님 가신다 수령님 쓰시던 춤짓보 오늘은 장군님 쓰신다 백두의 전보 신명한 전보 장군님 쓰신다.
The Shenyang F-5 is a Soviet-designed, Chinese-built, North Korean-operated second-generation jet fighter that has seen service from the 1950s until today. In real life, it stands out as one of the KPAAF's antiquated relics, whilst in War Thunder it stands out as a rather capable premium fighter. In this video, we'll take a look at what NATO called the fresco going into its history, its state in War Thunder, and how to play it.
백두의 전보 신명한 전보 장군님 쓰신다. 공산진영님을 쏜다 번개로 뒤따른다 장군님의 지령으로 승전 올린다 수령님 쓰시던 축지보 오늘은 장군님 쓰신다 백두의 전보 신명한 전보 장군님 쓰신다 축지보 축지보 장군님 쓰신다.
With the successful introduction of the MiG-15, and later the MiG-15 bis, in the skies over Korea, the Soviet Union's MiG Design Bureau was looking for ways to improve upon any remaining issues on the Fago. Broadly satisfied with the overall performance of both the airframe and engine, the main issue that needed to be fixed was its performance at transonic speeds. The MiG-15 had a Mach sensor to automatically deploy its air brakes once it reached Mach 0.92, as it couldn't safely exceed that speed. A number of changes were applied to the airframe in what would become the I-330 SI prototype. The notable changes over the MiG-15 were more swept wings, a third wing boundary layer fence, a longer fuselage, a more swept tail, and a ventral fin. The I-330 first took flight on the 14th of January 1950, under the control of test pilot Ivan Ivashchenko. On a later flight on the 17th of March, flying the same prototype, Ivashchenko's plane developed flutter whilst getting close to the sound barrier, causing a structural failure that ripped the horizontal stabilizers off, sending the aircraft into an unrecoverable spin and killing him. Despite this crash, two more prototypes, SI-02 and SI-03, were built, and the aircraft was approved for production in 1951, designated the MiG-17. The MiG-17 entered service with the Soviet Union in 1952 and was very capable for a transonic design. As large quantity production was delayed in favor of making more MiG-15s for the Korean War, it arrived too late to see service in that conflict. The Fresco, as it was designated by NATO, carried the same armament as the MiG-15, one 37mm and two 23mm cannons. It also had two hardpoints for bombs, which was very light when compared to contemporary aircraft, and these were usually used for carrying additional fuel tanks instead. It had the same VK-1 engine as the MiG-15, which was a copy of the Rolls-Royce Nene. and had a copy of the F-86 Saber's optical gun sight, which was considered a good system for the time and would greatly help it in future conflicts where it should have been considered obsolete. The MiG-17 also had a number of variants. The first of these was the all-weather MiG-17P, which featured an early RP-1 Izumrud radar mounted on the air intake, and either 2 or 3 23mm cannons, losing the 37mm. The next variant, and the one most relevant for us today, was the MiG-17F. This was an improved dayfighter variant that featured a modification of the VK-1 engine, the VK-1F, which featured an afterburner and, a couple dozen aircraft into the production run, an SPO-2 radar warning receiver. Other variants included the MiG-17PF, which was a combination of the two, and the MiG-17AS, which featured a more reliable, non-afterburning engine and the wiring to mount the R-3S air-to-air missile, a copy of the American AIM-9B Sidewinder. In the early 1950s, the PLAAF was given a number of Soviet-built MiG-17s, which were dubbed the J-4 and served alongside the MiG-15 bis, which was dubbed the J-2. In 1955, the PLAAF obtained parts for the MiG-17F to build domestically, as well as 2 completed aircraft, 15 kits, and parts for a further 10. These were built by the Shenyang factory and were named the J-5. The first was serialized 0101 and flew on the 19th of July 1956 under the controls of test pilot Wu Keming. In 1961, further plans were obtained for the MiG-17PF, the J-5A, but as the Sino-Soviet split continued, this type didn't fly until 1964, when it was already obsolete. From 1968, Chengdu built a 2-seater trainer variant of the J-5, named the JJ-5, which combined the MiG-15 UTI's cockpit, the J-5's engine, and the J-5A's fuselage, with only a single 23mm in a ventral pack to arm it. Overall, over 750 J-5s and 1,000 JJ-5s were built, and were exported to a number of countries where the J-5 was known as the F-5, and the JJ-5 the FT-5. The J-5 did see service with the PLAAF, and probably its most consequential incident was in 1958, where during the Taiwan Strait conflict, where the PLAAF J-5s fought with ROCAF F-86s, an AIM-9B Sidewinder became lodged in the tail of a J-5 whilst failing to detonate. The lucky pilot landed and the missile was recovered intact, which was later exchanged to the Soviet Union in exchange for some major concessions, and led to the development of the Soviet R-3S and subsequently the PL-2, both copies of the AIM-9B. A large number of F-5s and FT-5s were given to the DPRK, having been made compatible with the PL-2. While fairly decent at the time they were received, the F-5 still hasn't been retired. Yep, you heard that right. While reports of their airworthiness suggest they're in a dire state, they've still avoided retirement, with them having been seen flying as late as 2024 in at least a training capacity. Added in the September 2019 Night Vision update alongside China as a playable nation, the Shenyang F-5 is a Rank 6 GE premium jet fighter in the Chinese air tree. Initially added as a pack premium, it was taken off sale in November 2021 once China had the A5C to replace it as a pack premium, before coming back during Lunar New Year 2022 as a GE premium, which it remains today. While there are 2 other afterburning MiG-17s and 1 other MiG-17 with AIM-9B clones, the Shenyang F-5 is the only one to combine both, which sets it aside from its contemporaries and, frankly, makes it really fun to fly. As an overview, I'll talk about the airframe itself before going over the armament and then talking about its flight performance. The Shenyang is powered by the Shenyang Liming WP-5, which is a licensed copy of the VK-1F and produces 2,380 kgf of thrust dry, or 2,930 on afterburner, and it has the capacity for up to 30 minutes of fuel for it. Its wings will rip at 1,150 km an hour, or Mach 1.1, whichever it hits first, while its gear and flaps will both rip at 450 km an hour, although both are quite slow to deploy and retract. In terms of G limits, its wings can withstand up to 14.5 Gs, or negative 6.3, so you don't have to worry as you'll practically never be able to pull that hard. The F-5 also has a little bit of armor, 10mm of steel in front of the pilot, 16 behind their back, 25 behind their head, and a 64mm slab of bulletproof glass in front of the cockpit. Whilst this won't save you very often, it can sometimes allow you to nurse yourself back to base after taking a 50 cal or two. Your primary armament consists of two Type 23-1 23mm cannons and a single Type 37-1 37mm cannon, which are both hard-hitting but can be somewhat harder to aim than lower caliber weapons due to their rather low muzzle velocity and different trajectories, which can either be a blessing or a curse depending on if it clicks for you or not. It carries 160 rounds of 23mm and just 40 rounds of 37mm, although the different rates of fire means they'll both last around a total of 6 seconds, but these can also be independently fired. The Shenyang also has 2 pylons, one on each wing. These don't have custom loadouts as they only have 2 options, either a single missile or a single bomb on each. The missiles are the rear aspect infrared homing PL-2s, which are Chinese license-built Soviet R-3Ss, themselves being copies of the American AIM-9B Sidewinder. This Fox 2 has a caged, flare-hungry seeker and a very short range, which, while it might not sound useful in theory, in practice it's a game-changer when used correctly. The bombs, on the other hand, are the Soviet OFAB 250 SV, which have 97 kilograms of explosive mass and 0 CCIP or CCRP to speak of. When it comes to flight performance, the Shenyang F-5 is incredible in dogfighting. As its afterburning engine gives it heaps of energy, it can turn really well, especially below 500 km an hour, where it'll just keep flying and can outrate almost everything at its BR. Its energy also allows it to perform decently in the vertical against most aircraft it'll encounter, and it's extremely forgiving to fly. It also has an air brake, which is really useful for being able to get to the slower speeds where it turns the best. The airframe isn't without downsides, however. Much like the MiG-15 before it, the Shenyang has similar ways to counter it. Its roll rate is below average, and so it can struggle if brought into rolling scissors. It also isn't super maneuverable at very high speeds, and even though it is afterburning, it's still transonic, so any supersonic jet will have a higher top speed than it, which can let them run away if they get the opportunity to. In Air RB, the Shenyang F-5 sits at 9.0, where it's highly capable. Having recently been lowered from 9.3, it's in a much better state than it used to be, and can hold its own even in full up tiers. When spawning in, I'd recommend taking air target belts on both calibers, as well as the PL2s and around 70% fuel, or 20 minutes. When you spawn in, check the BRs of your teammates to figure out if you're in an up tier or a down tier. In either case, you'll want to climb, although keep your head on a swivel the higher the match's BR is, as you'll often run into MiG-21s, F-3Hs, and F-4Cs, as well as other aircraft with early radar missiles, which are fairly easy to dodge if you have energy, but you'll have to notice them being launched, as your RWR only covers the tail. Your best move early game is to take targets of opportunity. If someone is going into the vertical while fighting one of your teammates, try to catch them at the top of their loop where they're the slowest, which should give you the best chance at hitting a good shot. If they're slow or stalled out but too far away, you can use your PL2s to reach out and get them. Once the furball has died down a little, you can start entering dogfights, which you are highly capable for. Just be sure not to fall for rolling scissors, and take care when aiming against aircraft that rely on their roll rate, such as sabers. Remember that you massively outturn most of these, and can choose to reset the fight if they get too slippery. Just keep an eye out for their teammates, as you're susceptible to being third-partied. In Ground RB, you'll find the Shenyang F-5 sitting at 9.0, where it fits into a decent lineup. If you have the SP, I'd recommend bringing armoured target belts for the 37mm, and bringing bombs instead of the missiles, unless you desperately need to intercept some enemies, or you're dealing with some scary AA. Both of your bombs drop at the same time, meaning you'll only get one chance with them each flyout. The 37mm, on the other hand, can cut through light vehicles and most roof armour you'll encounter, provided you're not being harassed by SPAA. That said, if you're up-tiered into facing any sort of missile spar, you're going to be in for a rough time. Coming in at a price of 8,910 Golden Eagles when not on sale, the Shenyang F-5 is a premium. And so instead of going over modifications, we'll talk about whether or not you might want to buy it. If you're looking to buy a premium strictly to grind for top tier, then this isn't the best choice. Being rank 6, it can only efficiently research up to rank 7, and it requires you to be actively playing, being a completely ineffective base bomber if you're trying to grind passively. If you just want to reach top tier as fast as possible, right now I'd recommend the Su-30 MKK. That said, the Shenyang F-5 is an absolute joy to fly right now, and if you take an active role and get used to the airframe, you can earn a respectable amount of RP for a premium, and get yourself up to rank 7, where you can go for something like a talisman on the J7E. If you're not trying to grind and just want a fun plane to fly, then I would recommend getting the Shenyang, although perhaps waiting for one of the 50% sales would be a good idea, as nearly 9,000 GE is nothing to sneeze at. And, just as an added bonus, owning the Shenyang F-5 allows you to change your Chinese tree to North Korea, if that's something you're interested in. And that's it for the Shenyang F-5 as it currently stands in War Thunder. As currently the only North Korean vehicle in game, I hope I have the opportunity to cover more like it in the future. Regardless, I hope you've enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed making it. If you have, then liking and subscribing would go a long way and really help me to continue to grow this channel. If you want to be part of my community, there's a link in the description to my Discord. And that's all from me. I've been girltwink. Fly safe.
김종은